Debbie. Thanks to Brian and Debbie for doing music again. We're so thankful for them, as always, filling in, and Emma and Mercedes as well. I got to go to Lost Canyon the other night and see Kyle and Greta. They're in their middle of their assignment. I got to go speak to some of the Young Life interns at Lost Canyon and stay for their late 11 p.m. concert they do for the Young Life kids. It was so good to see them again and performing all their new songs from their album, which was really great. But we're very thankful for those that have filled in. They'll be back next week, but we've had a really great... In fact, I don't care if they ever come back. I think these guys are good enough. Forget Kyle and Greta. But we've moved on. Hey, welcome. If you're visiting with us, we're glad you're here. Very thrilled that you're with us today. We always begin by praying for another church in town, because that's what we believe is central, that we're just a tiny piece of a really big church out there that's vibrant and very diverse. So today we're going to pray for Hope Community Church and their pastor, Dave Reynolds, who's a good friend of mine. So if you're the praying type, join me and we'll lift them up. God, thanks for another beautiful monsoon day. Thanks for the gift of Flagstaff, where we live, the freedoms of this country, God, that we often take for granted. Thanks for America on this weekend. God, thanks for the history of this place and those that have given their lives for the freedom that we have to be able to so openly open up your Bible and talk so freely and discuss and learn together. And we thank you for that. We thank you for the many, many bodies of representing you in this town and around the world. And today we specifically lift up our dear friends at Hope Community Church. God, thanks for Dave Reynolds. Thanks for his long, wonderful history in this town of service and sharing your light and love. Pray that you bless their entire congregation, God. Let them be so aware as they met this morning throughout the week of your presence and your love for them. And we always pray, God, help us always draw closer to them in our friendships as we're all drawing close to you. We thank you, God, for that grace. And we also pray as we open your word today, as always, Father, will you please help to open our minds and our eyes and ears for what you might have for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I'm a little stressed out, I'm not going to lie to you. And you probably know why, because the Women's World Cup game is going on right now. And I'm actually pleased to see a little bit thinner crowd out there today. I was going to be offended if we were packed out today, because I think it was a pretty good decision to just go ahead and skip church and watch the game live. Now, you probably know, if you've been on Facebook, we have an after-watching party. We have DVR'd at Ken and Beth Collier's house, so we're going to go over there at 7 and watch the game. But I stayed in the back and avoided all you schmucks, because I knew that if I was lingering out there, somebody was going to pop off about something that's happened in the first half of this game. I already got around, I guess the game kicked off at 4, and I forgot to put my phone immediately on airplane mode, and I already got these texts, "Are you watching this?" with like little soccer balls in the text, which I don't even know how that magic happens. I don't know how you put pictures in a text message. It's not even a text message anymore if there's a picture in it. So anyway, I know something's happened in the first half, and it's killing me, so I can't focus on anything. And so I went ahead and just broke my phone and crushed it with rocks and threw it up on the roof of Coconino High School, because I refuse to hear anything. And I know some of you already know some things about this game that's happening right now as we speak. And if I even see so much as a smirk on your face of happiness that would lead me to believe something good has happened, or a frown that would lead me to believe that you are signaling that something bad has happened, we're going to shut this down. We're going to go watch the game right now. So I'm watching your face as we go today. No smiles, no sadness. I need neutrality from the crowd. And fate would have... then we have to shut it down. I had to process. What did I say? Yeah, we got to shut it down. Wait, somebody just smiled, so I guess we got to shut it down. Thanks for that, Aaron. Well, here's the deal. I'm excited about that. I hope you come join us for the game after. But life's got to go on. We got to focus and move forward. Team USA, I'm really excited about them being in the finals. Obviously on July 4th weekend. I hope you had a great day celebrating our great country. You know, I want to be really clear about something. If you've never been here and you're a guest before, you may not know this, but a lot of times I'm very, hopefully, lovingly critical about American Christianity and some of the things that we just kind of blindly embrace as American. But I want to make it very clear that I thank God that I live in the United States of America. I mean, truly, I am so thankful for the gift of living in a country that is free. I am thankful that we can talk so openly about things. I'm thankful about so many things about this country, and I think it is very appropriate to celebrate that in thankfulness on a weekend. That's not the same thing as becoming, I think there's extremes in anything. You could become overly patriotic and you could worship the United States and be blind to certain things, but I think at the core we should thank God of the amazing freedoms we have, especially in the large scope of history. Are you kidding me? the freedoms and the blessings and the riches that are poured out on our country. And I think that's a great call for us to share those things here and around the world. But it's a lot to be thankful for. So I hope you've got to appreciate that this weekend and celebrate. I had a little bit of a mini fail yesterday. I went to the Flagstaff parade in the morning, and as most of you that know our family knows, we just don't really have all of life together with 4 little kids. It's just hard to get sorted out. And as usual, we were late getting to the parade to meet people, and as usual, our kids haven't bathed in a few days and have been wearing the same clothes. And as we started walking, we parked at the Commons office and started walking downtown. I think it was Aspen that started looking around and noticing that Blaze was wearing his Mexico national team jersey to our 4th of July parade, and Colt was wearing a Manchester United England shirt. And if that's not ironic to support England on July 4th, Independence Day, I don't know what is. So we were feeling a little bit like failures, so we got there. But we did see a friend when we got there that was actually wearing a British flag on his shirt. And I was going, oh, that's a fail. You're actually wearing, actually, we love England, but I still think that was pretty funny. Didn't do well there. So here's the deal. We're doing this book club thing, as many of you know. If you haven't been with us for a while, you've been vacationing. We're on week, what is this, 3 or 2 book club? Yeah, we've only done 1, right? The Great Divorce from C.S. Lewis. And I got to say, I'm very, very proud of you guys. I kind of shamed you last week into being more participated in the vote for the book this week, and you came through in color. So I've now learned that shaming you is the only way to get results. But people overwhelmingly voted for a book that apparently is a human favorite, The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. I hope I brought it on stage with me. Yeah, I did. This is The Giving Tree. So we're going to talk about today. Not yet. But I was proud because I think maybe an all-time record votes for this particular book. So everybody seems to be pretty excited to dive into a children's book, and I was equally excited because I didn't have to go read some monster theology book. I still haven't forgiven you for Paradise Lost last summer and Milton. That's not going to happen again. But I was really excited about the ease of that. And I thought I would intro it by talking about a story that I actually shared here as a side tangent story in the last couple of years. But I want to revisit it because it's so similar to the narrative of the Giving Tree. And be excited about this. We're actually going to read the entire Giving Tree together today, here, in-house. Unbelievable, right? Buckle up. That's coming at you later. But I'm going to give you my own story about a tree that also has analogies to it to kind of warm us up for that. I think I did share it a couple years ago, I'm not sure. But I used to work at this camp, Hidden Falls Ranch. It's in Texas. It's on Palo Duro Canyon. It's a big, giant canyon in Texas, the second longest canyon in the world. It's very beautiful, very colorful. It's called Palo Duro Canyon because Palo Duro means hard wood. And it's named after these cedar and juniper trees that die and kind of leave this nice hard wood. Ironically, cedar's actually not that hard of a wood if you're a woodworker, but people who named these things didn't think about that. It looks hard if you knock on it and stuff. So, at this camp, we worked with 8 to 12-year-olds, and one of the traditions that we do is one particular night out of the week, we would go out to this place called West Point, which was this peninsula, beautiful peninsula that sticks out into the canyon, and you could just see almost 270-degree views of the canyon all around you. In fact, I've seen, this is not a lie, I've seen there when big Texas thunderstorms have rolled through, rainbows that almost connect all the way down. I've heard that people at the Grand Canyon have actually seen a full circle rainbow, but I've seen it connect almost at the bottom. Just beautiful, spectacular scenery. So we take all these 8 to 12-year-olds out there, and it would be kind of man time. This is boys' camp. The girls' camp would go out to East Point and have their night out, and who cares what they did over there? I'm sure they were doing their thing. But we did the man thing for these 8 to 12-year-olds, because this is when a boy becomes a man at camp. And so we walk out there, and so we had to come up with some rites of passage, because if you know anything about, and by the way, maybe I'm overcompensating a little bit for the feminism in me a little bit today with the barbaric, manly stuff we're about to talk about, but just be ready for it. This is kind of like Lord of the Flies material. When you get a whole bunch of guys together, the first thing that happens is everybody's shirts comes off. Nobody makes this decision. It's unspoken. Just shirts come off. Sometimes all clothes come off. But in this particular case, since it's a kids camp, we try to keep clothes on. So we get out there, we line everybody up on the cliff, and so we came up with this tradition. A friend of mine and I, we figured out that below this big giant cliff, you could line up, it's kind of a sandstone thing, and you could easily line up 50 to 70 guys there. And there was this giant cedar tree, I mean, it must have been ancient, that had died, and it was just huge. It was probably about 80 feet down below us. And we figured out that when you throw a rock off the cliff, if you hit that tree, it was dead enough that parts of it would just explode. Just throwing rocks, explosions. These are things that boys need to do, right? So we incorporated this into some sort of spiritual real thing. Not actually, spiritual is not the right word there. We incorporated it into a magical experience. We determined that we would call this tree the love tree instead of the giving tree. That's where the connection is going to be loosely made so we can move forward here today. In this love tree down there, we determined that what we would do is everybody would go around and find 3 rocks. So every boy would go, they would gather up 3 rocks that was a throwable size. We'd line up and we would all take 1 practice throw, so we would just rapid fire, everybody get 1 toss to try to hit it, because it actually wasn't that easy to hit. I would say maybe 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 shots would actually hit this tree. It had to be a big enough rock to do some damage and make some noise. And then we would all kind of prepare the tree. We'd count to 3. We would all throw at the same time. And several would hit the tree. And then it came time to seal the deal on all the camp love and emotions that were out there. So what we would do is each boy had to go, and at 1 at a time, he had to boldly yell out, and we had to have a big vow of secrecy here. By the way, you're probably going to think we're really terrible counselors after that, but I don't care. This is just real history. And so we said, all right, there's a secrecy here. No one shares any of this. What happens at the love tree stays at the love tree. So we're lined up there, and 1 at a time, each kid is supposed to throw the rock, and for it to work its magic, you have to yell the name of the girl that you had a camp crush on as loud as you could, so that it would echo through the canyon. As it's echoing, the love tree would tell you if it was destined to be love or not. Because if you hit it, that would mean this was good. If you didn't, it means you're out of luck, move on, find another name, kind of thing. But if it really hit the tree and it thundered and branches shattered everywhere, it was always this really huge eruption of emotion, because everybody knew we just witnessed basically a marriage. Like, these people are definitely getting married. So we had them lined up there, and I loved it, man, because all these 8-year-olds would go, and you'd hear, Susanna, and their little high, pre-pubic voices, and then you would just kind of hear the do-do-do if they miss. And you would just see this kid weeping and go off to the side. And we would just say, you'll never find love, just forget about it, go on. But those rare moments, when that rock struck the love tree, it was more than a moment for one person and one tree. It was like we united in the glory of the canyon. Because you hear the name echoing through and the tree goes, and you just hear the roar of the Lord of Flies, little people go, rah, it's going to happen. And the excitement level was tangible. You could taste it. Here's where it gets sad. Over the years, I worked at this camp for 10 years. I didn't really think much about the effect on the love tree over the years. Started to notice 5 and 6 years in that less and less rocks hit the branches that were abundant there. And I remember at the end of my reign at Hidden Falls, there was just this bare tree down there that had 1 stump that was nigh impossible to hit. You couldn't do it. Therein lies the story of the giving tree. You like what I did there? That's pretty good. All right, here's what we're going to do. I want to tell you about this book. We're going to read it, and I'm going to make some attempt to make this about the Bible, because you guys always try to throw curves at me with these weird books to see if I can take it back to the Bible. You know, we've done Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian. We've done Calvin and Hobbes, which I feel like we slaughtered that. You should go back and watch that one. Calvin and Hobbes is actually rich in its theological material, which you may not anticipate. Paradise Lost. We've done other books. But this one is pretty interesting. I've actually never read it, I have to admit. When it got voted for, I was excited. It was a kid book. I never read it. So I Googled it, and I went to Wikipedia, and I found out that this is a really popular book, which a lot of you already knew because you voted for it. But 8.5 million copies of this book have been sold since 2011. It's kind of interesting. Shel Silverstein is the author of this book. He was a cartoonist. Ironically, perhaps, he got his start in making cartoons for the magazine Playboy, which is always a good segue into the children's books industry, I guess. It seems to be a natural career path. But he wrote this book, and it kind of changed everything because of the mass success. Like many success stories, he was turned down by several publishers. Several thought it was too sad. It had too many adult themes in it. But Harper & Row decided in 1964 to give it a shot, and they published this. And I got to give them credit because it's a cute kids-looking front. And then on the back, I think I have a picture here. This is the back of the book. If that's not the most terrifying picture of a human being, I don't want my children to hold this book in their hands. And I'm not the only one that thinks this, by the way. I actually read on Wikipedia, it actually lists that there's a lot of people. In fact, I think it was this book, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I'm not familiar with it. But apparently, oh yeah, here we go. We got a shout out for Diary. But in that book, apparently, the dad uses this picture to threaten his children to stay. Like he holds this picture up to keep kids in the room. Well, so I thought that it would be a really good idea to talk to my kids about this and see what they thought. And I showed it all. And I said, "Is this guy? What does he look like to you?" And they said, "Oh, he looks happy." Oh, okay. And I said, "Well, do you think?" And all 4 of them, by the way. I said, "Do you think he looks mean at all?" I said, "No, he looks nice." I was just going, what on earth is the deal? And I went and asked Mark about it, and she goes, well, you understand why, right? I said, no. She goes, that looks exactly like you with no hair. Are you kidding me? Stop nodding your head. See that? I don't have that kind of teeth. I just want to go on record and say. So anyway, that got personal real quick. That being the stage set, I'm going to read to you a children's book. And so I took pictures and put it up here. So the first part's going to be kind of going fast because there's just a few words on each page. But this is The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. All right. Once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy. And every day the boy would come, and he would gather her leaves and make them into crowns and play king of the forest. He would climb up her trunk. I always make sound effects for the kids. That's a kid climbing a tree sound. And swing from her branches and eat apples. Okay, I'm going to move on from that. And they would play hide and go seek. I don't have a noise for that anyway. And when he was tired, he would sleep in her shade. And the boy loved the tree very much, and the tree was happy. See the little me in the tree? I thought one of the themes of this book actually might be something about tattoos, so just let that wash over here as we proceed through here. But time went by, and the boy grew older, and the tree was often alone. Then one day, the boy came to the tree, and the tree said, "Come, boy, come and climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and eat apples and play in my shade and be happy." "Well, I'm too big to climb and play," said the boy. "I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money. Can you give me some money?" "I'm sorry," said the tree, "but I have no money. I've only leaves and apples. Take my apples, boy, and sell them in the city. Then you'll have money, and you will be happy." And so the boy climbed up the tree and gathered her apples and carried them away, and the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and the tree was sad. And then one day the boy came back, and the tree shook with joy, and she said, "Come, boy, climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and be happy." "I'm too busy to climb trees," said the boy. "I want a house to keep me warm," he said. "I want a wife, and I want children, and so I need a house. Can you give me a house?" "I have no house," said the tree. "The forest is my house, but you may cut off my branches and build a house. Then you will be happy." And so the boy cut off her branches and carried them away to build his house. And the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and when he came back, the tree was so happy she could hardly speak. "Come, boy," she whispered. "Come and play. I'm too old and sad to play," said the boy. "I want a boat that will take me far away from here. Can you give me a boat?" "Cut down my trunk and make a boat," said the tree. "Then you can sail away and be happy." And so the boy cut down a trunk and made a boat and sailed away. And apparently half of his body was cut off somewhere in the process of cutting down this tree. And the tree was happy, but not really. And after a long time, the boy came back again. "I'm sorry, boy," said the tree, "but I have nothing left to give you. My apples are gone." "My teeth are too weak for apples," said the boy. "My branches are gone," said the tree. "You cannot swing on them." "I'm too old to swing on branches," said the boy. "My trunk is gone," said the tree. "You cannot climb." "I'm too tired to climb," said the boy. "I'm sorry," sighed the tree. "I wish that I could give you something, but I have nothing left. I'm just an old stump. I'm sorry." "I don't need very much now," said the boy. "Just a quiet place to sit and rest. I am very tired." "Well," said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could. "Well, an old stump is good for sitting and resting. Come, boy, sit down and rest." And the boy did. And the tree was happy. The end. All right, let's pray and go watch some soccer. It's a really interesting book. I enjoyed reading it. I actually read it to all four of my children this morning, one at a time, because I was just sure that they were going to give me some funny story to share with me, but they didn't at all. They all took it really seriously, and they all reacted in different ways, but it actually ended up being perfect, because when I read it individually to my four kids, each of them reacted in a way in which this book has actually caused controversy over the years. And I'll be honest, I'm forcing it a little bit, but they gave us the general idea. If you look up on Wikipedia even and just read a little bit about the controversy that surrounds this book, there's many interpretations of what maybe Shel Silverstein was trying to get across, or perhaps what anyone could interpret themselves from this story. In fact, one of the things that I like that's the most obvious connection to the Bible is on the inside here, it actually refers to the book as a parable. I mean, think about what a parable is. We often talk about the incredible giftedness that Jesus had as a moral teacher. I mean, one of the aspects of his incredible godness and the way he changed the world was his ability to tell a simple story and then people to sit around campfires talking about what it meant. In fact, we actually have stories of the disciples doing exactly that, saying, Jesus, what did you mean by this? And people struggled to figure out what the stories mean. With this particular story, there's different interpretations. I read it to Blaze first. And I said, Blaze, how does that story make you feel? And he said, I don't know. I said, okay, well, you're 4. That's not a big deal. And I said, so what did you notice about it? He said, I just think that, he said, I thought when you cut down a tree, it died. And I said, well, it does. And he goes, that tree didn't die. And I was like, I know, but it's a story. He goes, yeah, but if you cut down a tree, it's dead. And I said, all right, next kid, move on. So I'm going to use Blaze to frame the idea that this is some sort of ecological story. That this is a narrative about Mother Nature and humankind. And this is probably one of the most obvious analogies that might pop into your head. This boy, he takes, and he takes, and he takes, and Mother Nature gives and gives and is happy to do so, but at the end of the day, is there anything left? Now, critics of this theory would say, why would it end on such a positive note? If it's such a critique of Mother Nature and the just taking from the world, why would it end with a tree being happy and this almost pleasant end to it? Which is a valid criticism, but the problem is, anytime you talk about story or parable or narrative, you've probably discovered this yourself, narratives and analogies, they run to an end at some point, don't they? There's rarely a perfect analogy. And one of the things I like about you choosing this book and is giving us a chance to segue in a minute to look at a famous parable of Jesus is it reminds us that that's part of the power of a parable. And one of the things that I always like to say, which I think is really important to remember, is that the Bible, especially in its meta-narrative form, and especially in Jesus' parable form, has always meant to be a conversation starter and not a conversation stopper. Remember that about the Bible. It's a red flag when people are using it to stop the conversation instead of start great conversations, and more importantly, anchor great conversations. So this is a great conversation, I think, to be had about the ecological context, and pretty easy to draw from, but I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about that. There's only 2 versions that I want to spend any time really focusing on. The second kid was Sierra, our 5-year-old daughter, and I read her the story, and I said, hey, how do you feel about the story? And Sierra said, I liked it. I said, why? And she said, well, because the tree was so loving. I said, oh, is that all? And she said, yeah, I just thought the tree was really, really happy. So she represents kind of the people who read this story, which is many, and say, what a beautiful story of sacrificial love. Now, most people, not all, take it to be a picture of parental love in this context. In fact, there's been many scholarly, even at the doctorate level, dissertations written about this particular story, and if it is a good picture of parental love. The way in which a parent, this would be a mother tree, and in this case a boy child, will give and give and give, even if it costs them everything, and that will make a parent happy. Now, obviously there's some division on whether or not that is a healthy picture of parenting or not. But at least Sierra, in fact, I also ran into Brian and Debbie's children, Alana and Kayla, and they were reading the book out there because Alana loves this book, and they also said the same thing. They love that the tree is happy. And I really like that because the message, in fact, one of the things I read is that the church, when this got really popular, the church being a loose term here, in America, trumpeted this book as the joy of giving, the joy that you get from giving. And I'm not putting that down. There is joy in giving and sacrificing. There is good things to it. But I like that this story is more complicated than that. The tree was very happy, but one of the questions I asked Alana and Kayla out there, I said, hey, that's really great. I said, do you think the boy was ever happy? And they said, yeah, he was happy, and they just ran off and played. I said, oh, kids, you're wrong. He wasn't happy. This is complicated. I need material for my message. They didn't take it. So, moving on from Sierra, went to Colt, and I read the book to Colt, and I could tell as I read the book to Colt that Colt was not having the same reaction as Blaze and Sierra. He seemed confused as to why I was making him sit on the front porch and reading the book on Sunday morning anyway. But he also did not seem pleased. I said, how are you feeling? He said, I don't think I like that book. And I said, why? And he said, because that boy just took and took and took, and it did nothing but hurt that tree, even though the tree thought they were happy. And I said, so do you think this is a bad picture of how a relationship should be? He said, yeah, this hurt the tree. It was bad. Now, cult represents an obvious large section of people who read this book and react in a very negative way. There's been scathing reviews. In fact, I almost wanted to write them down and bring to you just the list of the vocabulary words that people have used to describe this book as trumpeting the worst possible picture of relationships you can have. And I want to spend a little time here because I think it's important, although I don't want to camp here and make it my main thing, because I think the critics of this type of relationship are onto something. If we're only looking this at an analogy of mother and child or friendship or marriage, I think we should have some really important red flags raised. First of all, this boy is never happy. In fact, anyone who's an addict counselor or anyone would understand there's a big part of enabling going on here. In fact, you might be able to rightly critique the parenting and say giving a child everything they want at your expense would be a huge mistake and enable your child to stay in a childlike state forever instead of growing up and learning. In fact, one of the most creative things I saw, I don't remember where I read it, but somebody actually wrote a response story to this with the same illustrations, but they added a second tree. And everything unfolded the same way until after the taking of the apples, because the boy would climb both trees and play. He would take the apples to sell them, and after the apples, the only renewable thing that was left, the second tree started to say no to the boy, and he continued to take from the giving tree. And the end of that poignant response, there are two trees at the very end. And when the old man comes back, there's the stump and the tree, and the stump is devastated when the old man comes and sits under the shade of the tree that told him no. I thought that's a pretty powerful response to this particular interpretation of the story, that possibly boundaries and have a little bit of balance and not giving away everything until there's nothing left in a human relationship is really important. I finally read the book to Aspen, and Aspen's 9, so she can process a little more. She thought about a lot of stuff. She said a lot of the same things that the other kids did, but she did notice in it another huge positive. She did notice that sort of unconditional love seemed to be something more like God. This is a really important piece because Shel Silverstein, I don't think, had any intention whatsoever in putting out an analogy about God or Christ. But even in Wikipedia, you can see that it's one of the major interpretations that this is supposed to be a picture of God's unconditional love, a self-sacrificial love that makes God very happy. And I want to focus on that a little bit. I think there's problems with it. I don't think it's perfect. The main problem I would have with it is the boy doesn't really ever appear to be happy. It's never enough. The money's not enough. Sailing on the boat's not enough. Maybe the rest is enough at the end. You can maybe take it that direction. But the idea is the character of the tree is somewhat like God. Regardless of the response that we have, God will love us without condition and have joy in doing that. Now, to take it to the scriptures, I think it's a really easy jump to my favorite parable, and I think probably many people's favorite parables of Jesus. We're going to look to Luke chapter 15, where we've gone before. Luke has 3 really beautiful parables in Luke chapter 15. He opens with the story of the parable of the lost sheep, and he follows up with the parable of the lost coin, which is so beautiful, where the woman represents God looking for this lost coin that means so much, because you kind of get the feel and the sense as Luke 15 is moving along that Luke is trying to tell us that Jesus came up with creative ways also to talk about God's unconditional love. And so that's what we're going to look at in arguably the most famous parable of all of Jesus' stories that have lasted so long in Luke 15, starting in verse 11. It says this: Jesus continued after telling these other parables. There was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided up his property between them. Now, if you've been here before when we've gone through this, I really think it's really crucial in this particular parable to remove our 21st century eyes and see and try to hear what first century Jewish listeners would have heard in the Middle East when someone tells this story. In fact, there's been great commentaries written by modern Middle Eastern people who say that even Middle Eastern culture today is shocked when they hear this story in Luke 15. Because, you see, they understand that inheritance from a father to a son is something that comes at death, and it's the most significant thing that's passed on from a father to a son, a remembrance of them. And in Middle Eastern culture now and in the first century, if you were to go up to your dad and say, "I want my inheritance now," you're basically saying, "You are dead to me, Dad. I have no interest in you. I just want the cash." There could not be a bigger frontal rebellion of a human being to another human being, nor more painful from a son to a father to say, "You're dead to me. Give me my money now. I'm out of here." Like the giving tree, this father could be critiqued. This father doesn't say, "I don't know if that's best for you. I don't know if we have the right boundaries in place." It just says in Jesus' version, So he divided up his property and he gave it to them. The father gave his resources, his inheritance, all that he had done to create a happy life for his kids. And then you probably know how the story goes, but try to hear it again anew. Not long after that, the youngest son got together all he had and he set off for a distant country. And there he squandered his wealth in wild living. And after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and he hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. And he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. Okay, here's again, we have to remember that you were in Palestine, what would have been the area of the Roman province called Palestine of the day. You are a Jewish person. You're under Roman occupation, and that means all sorts of weird things for your Jewish faith. One of the things that's been the most painful for your people as a Jewish person over the years is the mockery that the Seleucid Empire has put on, the Assyrian Empire, the Roman Empire. The first thing they do when they conquer the Jews every time is they slaughter pigs in the Holy of Holies. Because pigs, for a Jewish person, was the most unclean of all animals. They had a different frame, a different lens in looking at the world. It was clean or unclean, and pigs represented the most unclean, the most dirty, the most unworthy creature you could have. And yet here's this Jewish boy who's just told his dad, forget you, gone off and lived in wild living, which we get a hint at later as living with prostitutes and things from the older brother later in the story. And now he finds himself longing to put his face next to pigs and eat the food that they're eating. This is a picture of rock bottom. In Shel Silverstein's book, I think that we miss most of these pictures. We just kind of get the glimpses as the sun comes back. We don't see the problems that makes him want to sail away. We don't see what happens when the money doesn't fill him up and the house doesn't work maybe in getting him a wife and children that we never meet. We don't see the picture, but in Jesus' story, we get a very graphic picture. Verse 17, when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I'll set out and I'll go back to my father, and I'll say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and he went to his father. You know, I'm very thankful for the role I get to play in a lot of people's lives. It's been strange over the last several years getting to be in people's lives and seeing people, and also in my own life, experiencing brokenness or rock bottom in certain areas. And one of the things that I find interesting about Jesus' story, about this particular youngest son, is how accurately it portrays someone who's hit rock bottom. You hit rock bottom, but you still have pride. He knows he can't go back and say, I want to be your son. So he comes up with an alternate plan, almost to still be in control a little bit and say, I can earn my dad's level, just be a slave or a hired servant for him. So he has this way of maintaining a little bit of pride, but he's broken enough to know that I've got to just give up and go home and see how bad the punishment's going to be. When he came to his senses, he said, we've already done that. So he said he got up and he went to his father. This is what it says. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. And he ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. This is the good stuff right here. I hope you've just read and reread and lived in this beautiful parable of Jesus. I hope you've learned about how dishonorable this would have been for a Jewish property owner. He would have had to lift up and expose his feet to run in his robes with all his tassels dangling, something a grown, mature man would never do. He had to have been watching the horizon, as many commentators and preachers have pointed out over the years, waiting, hoping in expectation that his prodigal son, his lost son, would come home. And he was watching, and he was unashamed, and he did humiliate himself, and he did run to him, and he tackled him, and he kissed him, and it was like a dad and a little boy. And it must have been really painfully awkward for that boy. Probably exhilarating beyond his imagination, but completely awkward. The son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Speech A is ready to go. He fires in to speech A. Father wants nothing to do with it. But the father said to the servants, quick, he just ignores his son and his lame speech because he's relational and his baby boy has come home. He says, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. You can imagine these are all symbols. These are all signets of Jewish prominence of being somebody's son. The signet is the family crest. He's making it abundantly clear. There's no hired servant. There's no issues. You're back. You're all in. You're restored. And I'm thrilled about it. The tree was very happy. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and he is found. So they began to celebrate. They began to party. Not just for time's sake, I'm not going to go into what some people would argue is the most important part of the parable, the older brother. Some people actually call this the parable of the older brother. Some people call it the parable of the unconditionally loving father. Some people call it the parable of the prodigal father. Some people call it the prodigal son. What's my point in bringing all that up? A good story starts good conversations. A good story makes us think about different things about what it represents. Now, usually, we hope there's some sort of central message that Jesus is trying to get across there. And this one is so beautifully simple. That's why I want to come back to it again and again and again. And I hope to the day I'm 98 years old, maybe sitting on a tree stump, I hope I want to hear the story of the prodigal son again. Because it's that good of a story. That's why it's echoed through 2,000 years. It's why you can talk to anybody on the street who's been to church once in their life, and they'll understand the reference to the prodigal son. Because Jesus left an unbelievable mark on this planet when he told a very simple story about a father's love who was shocking and perhaps even should have been critiqued, like the giving tree. Well, so what? What's my point in all this? I think my analysis of the giving tree is this. If you're using it to talk about human relationships, it's really problematic. But if you're willing to look at it and suspend a little bit and say, maybe this could be a picture of what only God could do, a way in which only God could love, maybe there's a discussion started there. See, I don't think humans can have relationships like this. I don't think you can spin yourselves out because we really will be spent. But see, God's love has no end in the tank. God's love can resurrect. That tree could just regrow. It's more complicated with God. The love that we can experience from God, even when we're unhappy and we take and we take and we take, it really is impossible to out-sin the love of God. The beautiful thing about the giving tree is, even with God's unbelievable unconditional love, you can still be unhappy. The unique thing about this universe, the best of all possible universes, I believe, with all of its danger, all of its horror, all of its dichotomy of good and evil and courage and unconditional love and all those things, is that centered at the middle is God's crazy idea of free will. That a human doesn't have to not tear off branches of trees. A human can do that. A human can tell the Father, I want you dead and I want your money. And go live in wild living. And you can do that too. And it will not affect the love of God. You won't phase God's love one bit. Good luck trying. Go crazy. Knock yourself out. But you might find yourself miserable. I know I have found myself miserable in my life. When I have kicked against the goads, a phrase that Paul uses later, when I have tried to do it my own way, when I've done anything I can to test the boundaries if God still loves me or not. And He does. Great. He also wants us to be filled with life and light and joy. And so the reason I think the prodigal son, 2,000 years experience, is even better than the giving tree is because the response and the party that follows it. The joy that the son experiences when his dad weeps and kisses him and puts a ring on his finger and throws a giant party. That's a better picture of the ending of the story because of the boundless love of God. There's not a stump left. There's still God with all His givingness. And this son has responded and come home, and it changed everything. So what does that mean for us? Well, as we close today, I want to challenge you with the thing that you should think about naturally anytime you hear any story, is where would you be in these particular stories, both the giving tree and the story of the prodigal son? One of the genius things about Jesus' parables is it forced listeners to kind of think, no matter who they were, on the crowds of people that flocked around Jesus to hear what He was going to say or see what He was going to do. There was haters, there was people on the fence, there was worshipers, everything in between. They wanted to see what Jesus was going to say. He gives them simple stories, and no matter who they were standing around, they had to think, wait, where am I in that story? Where do I fit into the story of the prodigal son? Are you the prodigal son? It's very possible that one of the things I love about the Commons is we have a very diverse group of people that come here. And there's a very good chance several of you in here may have never even known in your entire life that all that you have done in life, God is still looking at the horizon, waiting for you to just turn right back around, to be embraced and loved. That, by the way, is what we call the gospel. That's the good news. Nobody's out. Everybody's welcome. No sins excluded. everybody can be embraced by God. And if that's you, do that. Turn to Christ. Receive that love. Some of you are like the older brother we didn't talk about, and you're self-righteous. I don't even want to go down that path. I want to transition and talk about the giving tree. Who are you in the giving tree? Are you a taker? Are you a giver? Paste the giving tree picture over your marriage, over your friendships, over the relationship you have to your parents. What do you look like? Mark and I actually got an argument about this earlier today. Because in the wisdom that I have as a husband, I said, I kind of feel like I'm the giving tree in our marriage. Write that down as a pickup line, husbands. No, it was a fun disagreement, which is definitely not true, by the way. If anyone's a giving tree in my marriage, it's my wife, for sure. But it's a fun discussion to have, to talk about. What does love look like? What are healthy boundaries? And that's with human relationships. But then talk about the distinctive of what a relationship with God is like. A lover who has no end to the resource. A completely renewable resource of love in God. Place yourself in those stories. Have those discussions. We're going to come to the communion table today, and at the communion table, I think it's a really appropriate time as to take something that is very much tangible and mysterious and real and physical. It's another one of Jesus' great ideas to tell a story about bread being like his body and wine like his blood, and telling us to do this in remembrance of him. And it's something that unites us with 2,000 years of Christians that celebrate this table in a lot of different ways, but in the essence, the same thing, that we're taking these physical elements into us. We're inviting Christ in us, the beautiful phrase of Paul that he uses so often. And we can receive forgiveness. It's an act, for some of us, maybe of just a prodigal son coming home. For some of us, it's an act of remembering Jesus. We've come home and we've experienced the love of God, but we need to remember that we're forgiven and loved, and that we can make choices that will make us free and happy. We don't have to be takers all the time. We can become givers, and we can experience the joy of giving. It's interesting. Jesus actually said it's better to give than to receive. It's only interesting to me, perhaps, but he actually doesn't say that in the Gospels. It's one of the only quotes in the book of Acts, Luke's second work, that Jesus said. It's better to give than to receive. And at this table, we experience all of that in one. Communion is a lot like a parable. This is what I think is very interesting. It is a very unifying thing in the church that we are one, brothers and sisters. We are one with God because of his love. But it also is like a parable. For some of us, it means I need forgiveness right now. For some of us, it means I need to forgive somebody right now. And it's a conversation starter. So I invite you to the table. We here celebrate it as an open table. We believe anyone's welcome at the table of the Lord, and we have 4 different places. And we hope that you have a conversation with God in your heart right now as you take these elements that I'll pray with. Lord, I thank you for Shel Silverstein's book, and the conversation that it has started in so many places, and universities, even newspapers, coffee shop conversations about relationships with humans and with you. And Lord, I pray today that you help us to let it transition us to you, the greatest storyteller, in the beautiful picture and the story that we have. Whenever we doubt your love, we can remember this very clear story that you told. God, that though we wallow with pigs who are waiting for us at any moment to turn our hearts back and to receive that love. So at this communion table right now, God, I ask you to please receive us back. Take us home. And God, in the same way that it's a celebration, we want communion today to be a celebration of that love. And we begin by all of us in our hearts asking you, Father, will you please forgive us the sins in our life? We thank you for dying on the cross for our sins. We thank you, God, that we can't out-sin your love. And we receive, or we take, I guess. We just take from your giving tree right now, God, your love. And God, I pray it will transform us, make us alive, and we will celebrate together and be the sort of community that shares your love and experiences the joy that you have for us. We love you and give you this time. So, game's probably over, and I don't know who won. And if I find out from one of you, I will rip your head off. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take your phones out right now and break them in half. And leave them on the floor here, and then we can go mingle post-church like we normally do, and nobody gets hurt. We all good on that? Really, we want you to come. If you're interested at all, we're going to have a really great time over at Ken and Beth's house. We're going to start about 7 o'clock. There'll be a tear down here, so if you got an extra minute and want to help us tear down, that would be extra sweet. In the summer, we've been really lean and thin. I'm really thankful for all of you that have been helping set up and tear down. But we could always use extra help. There's a place to sign up out there if you're interested in helping about once a month or once every 6 weeks with childcare or set up tear down more regularly. It would be great tonight just to hang out and tear down. Don't talk about soccer. And also, we usually play soccer tonight. We're obviously not doing that. We're going to do that tomorrow night. I talked to Vince over at Redemption Church, and they're going to try to get some guys out there tomorrow. It won't be an official Redemption versus Commons Bloodbath like in the past. Just more of a friendly where we all mix together with them, which is really cool. So tomorrow night, we're going to play soccer at Sanawa at 6:30 if you're interested. 6:30 tomorrow night at Sanawa. Last thing is, you probably noticed them, we haven't talked about it in a long time, there's little common stickers out there. The tree and the half moon thing there. If you want to stick one of those on your car, the vision there is that it doesn't say explicitly what it is. It's just this really unbelievably cool logo. And then people will ask you, what is that? And you just say, don't worry about it. It's none of your business. And that will create such an enormous buzz in town that this church will explode. Trust me on that. So that's what you say. So if you want one of those for your water bottle or your car, make sure you grab that. Let me pray for you guys and we'll take off. Oh, wait, you know what? Before we pray, this is really important. For the game tonight, if you're coming over to Ken and Beth's, because it's all kind of last second, grab a side on your way over there. It's kind of a potluck thing. You're going to grab some meat. I think Ken's going to have the grill going. Grab a side, grab some drinks, whatever. So we'll just kind of hodgepodge it together. Now let's pray. God, thanks for today, and thanks for this community. And Lord, we just pray that we will be filled with your light and life as we leave here today. God, I pray you help us connect with each other. Help us connect with our other brothers and sisters in this town that worship other places. And God, I pray that we will really shine your unconditional love to this town. In Jesus' name, amen.